I'll bet you're here to find out what social psychology means. Well, good news for you, I'm about to tell you. Social psychology is a huge field of social science, and even though it's just part of psychology as a whole, it really covers a ton of different topics, which can sometimes make it confusing to figure out what is it that makes social psychology its own field? How are all of these different things that it studies lumped together into one discipline? Well, we got to start somewhere. Even though lots of different people have put out lots of different definitions of social psychology, let's go ahead and start with one that I think makes a lot of good points. It's written by Gordon Allport and was published in 1954 in the Handbook of Social Psychology. Allport is known as something of a father of modern social psychology, and so I think some of the parts of his definition can really help us narrow in on what is it that a social psychologist would study. According to Allport, social psychology is the scientific attempt to understand how the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors of individuals are influenced by the real, imagined, or implied presence of other human beings. Okay, that's a mouthful, so let's go through it one step at a time. The first thing worth noting is that social psychology is a science, and that's the terminology that Allport uses. It's not just that social psychologists are sitting around thinking about how humans tend to operate. They're going in and trying to find answers. By conducting rigid psychological studies, we can understand more about what really happens when people are faced with various decisions. By implementing all the stages of the scientific method, we can understand something a little more concrete and reliable about psychology, rather than just people watching and coming to answers through that method. Another thing worth noting is that this is about the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors of people. We care about the whole range of experiences that a human person can have. Thoughts being the kinds of beliefs or expectations that people have about what's going on in the world. Feelings being those kinds of emotional feelings that we have, the moods that we end up being in, how all of that comes together. And finally, the behaviors, the kinds of things that we can look at and see people doing and ask, why are they doing that exactly? Another component to emphasize is that part about being individuals. Social psychologists care about how groups work, how society works, but really the focus is on individual people in those groups or in those societies. Sociologists, for example, also study social psychology, but from their perspective, it's more about the emergent properties of social phenomena, whereas psychologists want to get a little more inside of the head of an individual person by understanding what they care about, how they operate, what their motivations are, all sorts of things. We can understand how individuals move through their social environments. And finally, the thing that makes this specifically social psychology, rather than any other form of psychology, is that it's focused on how people are influenced by other human beings. We are social creatures. We live in a social world. We can't really survive without other people, right? We have lots of emotional needs and attachments, and the way that we think about the world is shaped by others around us. And so what social psychologists want to do is look at the range of human experiences, the range of things that our brains can do, the feelings we can have, the behaviors that we enact, and see how those are shaped by the world around us, the social world around us. How we feel about who we are, our self-esteem, for example, is shaped by how we fit in with other groups. Our sense of the world can be shaped through persuasion and influence by other people. The feelings we have, the thoughts we have, the way we see other people, all of it is super social. And so in the end, social psychology really cares about that social component, even though it can look like we're studying all sorts of different things. So there you go, a quick rundown of social psychology and what it's all about. It's a science, it's about individual people, it's about our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, and it's about how all of that stuff is shaped by the social world around us. And now you know. Armed with that knowledge, who knows what you'll do, but at least you have a sense of what social psychologists do and why it's called social psychology. For more social psychology, subscribe to this YouTube channel, or go to beapeopleexpert.com and find new articles every week about psychological science.